Hi everyone, I just wanted to take a few minutes to go over an upcoming lab assignment with you. This assignment is called the original procedure, and you will find a link to the instructions and a place to turn it in under the lab materials tab. This assignment will be due on November 22nd, so right before you go into Thanksgiving break. And let's go over a little bit about this assignment. So the main thing with this assignment is that it's similar to the formal report that you wrote. But the big difference is this time, instead of writing a report based on an experiment you did and collecting data and all that stuff, you're going to actually write a procedure for a new experiment. So something that a fellow student could follow if they were interested in doing this experiment. And so you actually won't end up having data. So you'll write everything else. So like the introduction, the materials section, the procedure, and we'll go over that in just a moment. But you won't actually do any of the data workup. You will just sort of explain how to do the experiment. Okay, so the first thing you'll find here is just how to set up the actual assignment, so what font to use, all that good stuff. So I won't spend too much time going over that with you. But down below that, you'll find the research problem. Okay, so the research problem, it says to separate a mixture of iodine, potassium bromide, iron powder, and aluminum oxide powder. And then wants you to determine the percent by mass of each of the components. Okay, so in this particular separation, so this is sort of similar to the separation lab that you wrote your report on, in which you're going to use physical methods, so not chemical methods, but physical methods to actually separate these. So that's your first bullet point here. So it should involve only physical and not chemical processes. In other words, you can use things like decantation, sublimation, you could use a magnet, you could use filtration, all of those good physical separation techniques, all of those can come into play with this assignment. Okay, but one thing to point out here is it's not practical to use the melting point to separate any of these solids. So although they do have different melting points, in this particular lab, we're not going to have access to those type of devices. So just think about things that you would have in a normal general chemistry lab. So maybe look back at the separation lab to kind of get a feel for that, and use those techniques. Okay, so you want to give careful thought in designing the procedure so the mass of each component will be obtained with the highest degree of accuracy. Okay, so you're going to want to put in there things like, pre-weighting an evaporating dish or pre-weighting a beaker, all that kind of stuff, so that you can get the most accurate mass for each component. Okay, and you want to make sure that you indicate to this theoretical student each time they need to take the mass of something. So don't assume that they understand that, once you dry a substance, you need to take its mass, or that you need to pre-weigh an evaporating dish before you actually use it, or to pre-weigh a watch glass. So make sure that you go ahead and tell them anytime they need to collect data. So just like you would like to see if you were reading a procedure, give those same things to this hypothetical student. Okay, so it's up to you to come up with the procedure on your own, but you can call from outside sources. So for instance, look at the separation lab that we did in class. You can look at other separation labs. You just can look up general separation techniques. Would probably be a good idea. Just look up physical separation techniques and see in your mind how you can piece those together to separate these things. So you'll need to look at things like solubility. You can look at things like, does it attract to a magnet, for instance, something like that. Okay, so look at those techniques, and you can use any of those to separate this mixture. And so what you need to do in your actual report is to break it down into these sections. So this will be very similar to the formal report that you did. And again, the main thing being here is that you won't actually collect any of the data. Okay, so you'll have a heading. Okay, so of course this should have your name, the course, my name, the date that you'll be submitting, and a title for the experiment. Okay, so write a good title. Come up with something that expresses what the lab is. Next thing, objectives. So tell the reader what exactly you're going to be doing in the experiment and how you're going to accomplish it. Again, so similar to your formal report. And again, 3 to 5 sentences, doesn't have to be a huge paragraph, but make sure that you convey all of the information. When you see something like 3 to 5 sentences, Just know that those are guidelines. So if you need to say a little bit more than that, that's okay. And if you don't need to quite say 5 sentences, that's okay too. Okay, just make sure you get your message across. So you want to say, what is it that we're doing? How are we doing it? Next thing, materials section. Okay, so include everything that you need. So any lab equipment, do you need a hot plate? Do you need a ring stand? All these kind of things that you might need. And of course, make sure to include the fact that you need the unknown mixture. So those sections have all been, these two are 10, and then the heading is 5%. And the main bulk section of your actual grade will come from the procedure. Okay, so if you can write up a good procedure, and you're going to want to make this as a numbered list. And the main thing that I'm looking for here is that you include all of the steps necessary so that the lab could actually be done. That's one of my big things when I grade this section is I want to know, could this experiment actually be done based on what you wrote? So I will go through in my mind and I will look at what you wrote and say, okay, they did this, this, and this. Could I actually meet the goal, the objective by doing this? And I also want to see that you've told the student when to actually write things down. So tell them, take the mass of this evaporation dish, take the mass of the mixture, these different things, so that in the end they would come out with an actual report where that they could actually write up, okay, and actually meet the goal or the objective that you stated in your objective. Okay, so just notice that this is the big section, so that's where you should spend most of your time when you're writing this report. Okay, lastly is the works cited. So if you used lab flow experiment or any outside source, just make sure you list it here. And again, that will be worth 5%. Okay, so you have until November 22nd to start this assignment, or to turn this assignment, excuse me. I would recommend starting it a little bit sooner than that, as soon as you can, so that if you run into any issues, you can always talk to me about it. So feel free to discuss this assignment with me if you have any questions, and good luck.